My name is Ashley Reed. I am 29 years old. I work as a graphic designer at a mid-size creative agency in Chicago, Illinois, where I spend my days building visual systems, logos, layouts, brand guides, the kind of work that requires you to look at a collection of elements and identify the underlying pattern that connects them. I am, professionally and by nature, someone who sees patterns. I notice when something doesn't fit. I notice when something is missing. It took me 4 years to see the pattern in my own family. I want to tell you that up. 4 years. And I want you to understand why it took that long, because the answer to that question is the most important part of this entire story. It took 4 years because the person doing it was my sister. And when the person who is deliberately excluding you from your own life is someone you love, every single time it happens you reach for an explanation that protects them. You tell yourself it was an oversight. You tell yourself she was busy. You tell yourself she didn't think. You tell yourself there must be a reason, a good one, and you just haven't figured it out yet. You do this, the alternative. The alternative is too large and too painful to look directly. My sister Brittany is 5 years older than me. She is 34 years old and she lives in Evanston, which is about 45 minutes north of my apartment in Lincoln Park. And she has, for as long as I can remember, been the kind of person who organizes things, events, gatherings, plans. She has a talent for it. She knows how to set a table and create an atmosphere and make the people in a room feel like the evening was designed specifically. She threw a surprise party for our mother's 60th birthday that people are still talking about 3 years later. She organized a cousin's reunion in Michigan the summer before last that genuinely was one of the best weekends I can remember. She is, in every observable sense, excellent at making people feel included. Every people except one. My birthday is June 14th. I have had the same birthday my entire life, which I understand is how birthdays work. And it falls in the same month as 3 of my cousins, Emma on June 3rd, Tyler on June 19th, and Jordan on June 22nd. For as long as I can remember, the family marked June birthdays together. Not always a big event, sometimes just a Sunday dinner, sometimes a cookout in someone's backyard, but acknowledged, collectively celebrated. A thing that said, "You matter, we are glad you were born." In the summer 4 years ago, my sister Brittany organized the first big joint June birthday party for Emma, Tyler, and Jordan. I found out about it from a Facebook post. The morning after. Let me take you back to the beginning. Not to the first party, I will get there. I need to take you back further, to a house in Oak Park, Illinois, and to the specific shape of what it meant to grow up as the younger sister of Brittany Reed. The Reed family home was a craftsman bungalow on Scoville Avenue in Oak Park, Illinois. The kind of street where everyone knew everyone and the summers were long and the 4th of July block party was a genuine neighborhood institution that people planned for months in advance. My parents, Carol and Dennis Reed, had lived there since before I was born. My father was a high school history teacher at Oak Park River Forest High School, which meant that we knew half the town's teenagers, and they all called him Mr. Reed with the affection you reserve for the teacher who actually changed something in you. My mother worked 3 days a week as a dental hygienist and spent the other 4 days being the organizational backbone of our household, which was a full-time job in its own right. Brittany was born in April of the year my parents moved into that house. I came along 5 years later, in June, and by all accounts the arrival of a second child did not diminish my parents' capacity for enthusiasm. There are photographs of they brought me home from the hospital that show my father grinning in a way that suggests he had never been so pleased about anything in his life, and my mother looking exhausted and radiant in equal measure, and Brittany standing slightly to the side of the group, 5 years old, with an expression that I have spent a considerable amount of time looking at as an adult. She is smiling, but she is standing to the side. I do not want to read too much into the body language of a 5-year-old. Children find the arrival of a sibling disorienting. This is universal and expected, and not in itself a sign of anything. But I mention it because it is the earliest photograph I have of the dynamic that I would spend the next 24 years inside, and because patterns, when you finally see them, tend to have beginnings that were visible all along. You just weren't looking. My father loved both of us. I want to say that absolutely clearly because this story involves his death. And I don't know what difference he played fade friends in some clean or obvious way. He was present with both of us. He coached Brittany's soccer team for 3 seasons when she was in elementary school. He drove me to every art class I took from age 8 through high school. He showed up. But there was a specific quality to the relationship my father with me that's different from the one he had with Brittany. And I believe, having thought about it at length, that neither he nor I chose it or manufactured it. It was simply the specific chemistry of 2 people who turned out to be alike in ways that were legible to each other. My father was a reader and a thinker and a person who found ideas more interesting than events. And so Brittany was a doer, an organizer, a person who found joy in the execution of plans and the managing of outcomes, which was much more like our mother. These were not value judgments. They were just true. My father and I talked. That is the simplest way to say it. We talked about books and history and things we'd noticed and questions we didn't have answers to. We talked the way 2 people talk when they have recognized something in each other. He would knock on my bedroom door on Sunday evenings after dinner and ask if I wanted to take a walk. And we would walk for an hour around the neighborhood and talk about whatever we were both thinking about. And those walks are among the most important memories of my childhood. Brittany did not go on those walks, not because she wasn't invited. She was invited initially and chose not to come. I think she found them dull. I think she genuinely did not share our interest in sitting with an idea for an hour and turning it over. This was not a flaw. It was just a difference. But I understand now. And I understood only very gradually, and only after a great deal of thinking, that the difference felt, to Brittany, like a verdict. Like our father had looked at both of his daughters and found one of them more interesting than the other. Like those Sunday walks were a referendum on value rather than simply a compatibility of temperament. I don't think she consciously believed this. I think it lived in her at a level below conscious belief, the way the most formative things usually do. I think it was a feeling rather than a thought, and feelings that live below the level of thought are the dangerous kind precisely because you cannot examine or interrogate them. They just act. My father died of a stroke when I was 22 and Brittany was 27. He was at school, a Wednesday afternoon in November, during a free period at his desk in his classroom, and he was gone before the paramedics arrived. He was 54 years old. He had been, for 22 years, the person in my life who made me feel most seen. Let me tell you about who Brittany Reed was by the time she was 29, and I was 24, and we were both adults living within 45 minutes of each other, and seeing each other at family events and occasionally. In those first years after Dad died, just the 2 of us for dinner or coffee. Brittany is genuinely capable. I want to give her that completely and without caveat, because is true, and because part of understanding this story is understanding that the person at the center of it was not incompetent or unsuccessful, or someone whose life had gone badly. She had a good career in event planning. She had a good apartment in Evanston with a balcony that overlooked a small park. She had a solid group of friends who loved her and a boyfriend named Craig who was steady and kind and who clearly adored her. By the visible metrics of a life, she was doing well. She was also, and I am choosing this carefully because it is the right word, the center of her own world in a way that required constant maintenance. Not in a dramatic, demanding way, in a quiet, consistent way. Brittany needed to be the most important person in whatever room she was in. Not the loudest, she was not loud. Not the most attention-seeking in an obvious sense. But there was an orientation to her, a kind of gravitational pull she exerted, that meant that conversations in her presence tended to move toward her. That family events she organized were, in some fundamental way, about her. That her presence anywhere was felt as a kind of implicit assertion. I am the one who made this happen. I am the one you should be great to. I noticed this as a quality of hers long before I understood it as a problem. It was simply how Brittany was. She was competent, and she was visible, and she needed to be acknowledged. This seemed, in the context of family, manageable. Everyone has traits. Everyone has needs. What I'd account for was what happened to those needs when someone else's existence threatened to compete with them. After my father died, I became, without choosing it, the person in the family who carried his memory most visibly. This happened naturally. My mother would look at me sometimes with an expression that contained both love and a kind of because looked like same dark eyes, same tendency to tilt my head when I was thinking, same laugh. And she would say things like, "You are so much your father's daughter," and mean it with warmth, no malice whatsoever. My aunts and uncles would make the same observations. My cousins, the people who loved him, looked at me and saw him and said so. I did not ask for this. I found it, honestly, more painful than comforting for a long time, because being seen as someone's reflection is not the same as being seen as yourself. But I understood where it came from, and I received it with the grace I could manage. I don't know exactly when Brittany began to experience my presence in the family as a competition she was losing. I only know that the evidence, looking back, suggests it had been building for longer than I knew. The first thing I noticed, before the parties, before any of it, was what I can only call a temperature change. A slight but consistent coolness in Brittany's manner toward me that appeared in the 2 years after our father's death, and that I attributed, generously and incorrectly, to grief. People grieve differently. People pull back. I gave her that. I gave her that for 2 years. The second thing I noticed was what didn't happen. My 25th birthday was the first one after father died. My mother called. My aunt Denise called. My cousins sent texts. My friends from college sent the group chat into a frenzy. Brittany sent a text at 11:50 m.m. Happy birthday, Ash. Hope it was good. No phone call, no plans offered, no suggestion that we see each other for a 25th birthday. The first one after we'd lost our dad. I told myself she was dealing with her own grief. I told myself she wasn't someone who made a big deal of birthdays. Told myself a lot of things. My 20th birthday, a card in the mail. Arrived 3 days late. Generic. The kind you pick up at Walgreens on the way to somewhere else. Signed love, Brittany. No call, no plans. My 27th birthday, a text on the correct day this time. Hey, happy birthday, celebrating. We should get dinner soon. We did not get dinner soon. She did not follow up. I did not push. My 28th birthday, nothing. Not a text, not a call, not a card. I waited until 9 o'clock that night, and then I put my phone face down on my kitchen counter, and I went to bed. But the birthday silence, that I have continued to explain away. People get busy. People forget. Some families don't make a big deal of adult birthdays. I might have kept filing those experiences in the drawer labeled things I don't fully understand, will generously not pursue, except for the parties. The first party was the summer I turned 26. It was early June, a Saturday afternoon, the kind of Chicago area June day that feels like a gift after a long Illinois winter, white, with the first real humidity of summer starting to build at the edges. My cousins Emma and Tyler and all had birthdays within 3 weeks of in June. I had always known this. It had always been in our family a gentle joke, the June birthday cluster, the summer kids. I was part of that cluster. I had always considered myself part of it. Brittany sent invitations to a joint birthday celebration for Emma, Tyler, and Jordan. She rented out the back patio of a restaurant in Evans that she knew from her event work. She arranged flowers. She ordered a custom cake, 3 tiers, one for each birthday, with their names on it in frosted lettering. She made a slideshow of photos from each of their lives set to music. She arranged party favors. I know all of this because the photos went up on Facebook the following morning. My phone buzzed at 8:47 a.m. on a Sunday with a notification. Brittany Reed posted new photos. I opened it, still in bed, still half asleep. And I looked at a gallery of 34 photographs documenting a celebration that the entire family had attended. My mother, my Aunt Denise, my Uncle Paul, my Grandma Ruth, who was 78 and did not leave her house for many events anymore but had left it for this one, cousins I hadn't seen in months, old family friends, and which had taken place at a restaurant 45 minutes from my apartment on a Saturday afternoon. My birthday was 11 days away. I looked at those photographs for a long time. I looked at the custom cake with Emma and Tyler and Jordan's names on it. I looked at my mother laughing at something out of frame, dressed nicely, clearly having a wonderful time. I looked at my Grandma Ruth being helped to a seat by my Uncle Paul, smiling in a way I hadn't seen her smile in years. I looked at my cousin Emma holding up a glass in a toast, her mouth open in a laugh. I put my phone face down. I told myself I must not have been invited because of a mistake, an oversight. Brittany had organized this for the June birthdays and my birthday was June 14th, and somehow my name had just been left off the list. This happens. People overwhelmed when planning events. Things fall through the cracks. I waited 3 days. I told myself that if I waited 3 days and Brittany didn't reach out, didn't call to say, "Oh my God, Ashley, I am so sorry. I can't believe I forgot to include you," then I would call her and address it gently. She did not call. She did not text. She posted a second round of photos on Monday with the caption, "Best June tradition." Same time next year. On Wednesday, I called her. I kept my voice light. I said, "Hey, I saw the party photos. It looked like so much fun. I didn't know you were planning that. I would have loved to come." There was a pause. The specific kind of pause that is not a silence of surprise but a silence-agation, a person deciding which road to take. She said, "Oh yeah, it was really nice. I kept it pretty small, it was just the June birthdays." I said, "My birthday is in June." Another pause. Then, "Oh right, I know. I was thinking more of the cousins who live close. You know how it is, it's hard to coordinate when everyone is spread out." I lived 45 minutes away. Emma and Jordan all lived within the same 45-minute radius. There was no geographic logic to her answer. I said, "Sure, no worries. Just wanted to mention it, she said. Yeah, totally. We'll hang soon, okay? We did not hang soon. My 26th birthday arrived 11 days later. My mother took me to dinner. My friends from the agency took me out for drinks after work. It was a genuinely good birthday. I had people who loved me and showed up, and I held on to that. But I also home that evening and lay in bed and thought about the photograph of the 3-tier cake. Emma, Tyler, Jordan, 3 names in frosted blue lettering, and I thought, my name would have fit. The space was there. The cake was big enough. My birthday falls in the same cluster. My name would have fit. The second summer, I was prepared. Not with bitterness, I want to be clear about that. I was not approaching the summer with a chip on my shoulder or a grievance nursed carefully through the winter months. I was approaching it with the specific, careful attention of someone who needed more information before they could know what they were dealing with. I had one data point from the previous June. One data point is not a pattern. I needed to see what happened next. In February of that year, I had a conversation with my mother that I keep returning to in my memory. We were on the phone, a Sunday call, which we had every week, without fail. She mentioned he was already talking about the June birthday party, that she was planning something bigger this year, that she had found a new venue. I said, "Is she planning to include me this year?" My mother said, "What do you mean?" I said, I wasn't invited last year. This that followed was the silence of a woman who did not know this and was having a rapid internal conversation with herself about what it meant. My mother said, "I'm sure she just," and then stopped, and then said, "I'll talk to her, honey." She did talk to her. I know this because Brittany texted me a week later, a week not immediately, a week, and said, "Just want to make sure you know you're always welcome at family stuff, obviously. Mom said you felt that last year. I didn't realize. Not I'm sorry. Not, I should have included you. I didn't realize." A passive construction that placed the oversight in the category of things that simply happened, without an agent, without a choice. I texted back, "No worries, just wanted to make sure I'm in the loop going forward." June, of course. June are warm. I kept my phone nearby, in the way you keep your phone when you're waiting for something you're not sure is coming. On June 8th, a Saturday, 6 days before my birthday, my cousin Emma posted a story on Instagram. It was a video taken at what was clearly a party venue, with balloons and a long decorated table, and music playing in the background. She was holding a glass up to the camera and saying, "Happy birthdays, everybody." And you could see, in the sweep of the camera as she panned the room, the people who were there. My mother, my Aunt Denise, my Uncle Paul, my Grandma Ruth, my cousin Marcus, who had driven down from Milwaukee, my cousin Priya, who had flown in from Denver, had flown in, a plane ticket purchased, travel arranged. My mother's friend Linda, who had known us since before I was born. I was not there. I had not been invited. Brittany had told my mother, of course, I was included going forward. She had invited Marcus from Milwaukee and Priya from Denver. She had not invited me, 45 minutes away, who had told her directly, through our mother, that I had felt excluded the previous year. I sat with that for a long time. A long, quiet, disbelieving time. Because there is a specific kind of thing that happens when you realize that what you thought was carelessness was actually intention. When the second instance of something lines up exactly with the first and the charitable explanation, the oversight, the mistake, the being too busy, collapses because there is no charitable explanation that it accounts for both data points simultaneously. She had been told. She had said, of course. She had then done it again. I called my mother that evening. My mother had been at the party. I want to be clear about this. My mother had been at the party and had not thought, in the planning stages, to ask whether Ashley had been invited. I am not angry about this. I want to say that too. My mother trusted her oldest daughter. She had assumed the conversation with Brittany had resolved things. She had not done a roll call. When I told her I hadn't been invited, her response was not surprise. It was something heavier than surprise. It was the response of a woman who was beginning to see something she had not wanted to see. She said, "I'll call tomorrow, Ashley." I said, "Don't call her. I need you to just hear me right now. This is the second year. I specifically told her last year. This is not an accident." Silence. Then, "I don't understand why she would do this." I said, "Not yet. But I'm going to start paying attention." The list started as a note on my phone. A simple, running document titled, unimaginatively, but accurately, Things. I opened it on the evening of the second June party, the one I found out about through Emma's Instagram story, and I typed the date and what had happened, and then I scrolled back through my memory and typed everything I could remember the year before. Over the following 12 months, the list grew. In August of that year, 2 months after the second party, the whole family gathered at my Aunt Denise's house in Naperville for the annual end-of-summer cookout. I had been to this cookout every year of my life. It was a family institution. Lawn games, my uncle's legendary brisket, everyone staying until the fireflies came out. I got the date from my mother. I showed up. The gathering was winding down when my cousin Mars mentioned in passing that Brittany had organized a pre-cookout activity, a kayaking trip on the DuPage River for anyone who wanted to come. He described it as a good time. He mentioned who had been there: Emma, Tyler, Jordan, Marcus himself, my Aunt Denise's 2 kids, 2 of our family friends. Not me. I had not been contacted. Not a text, not a group chat, nothing. A family activity had been organized, and my name had not been included in the organizing. I typed it into the list that night. Activity: who was included, who was not. In October, Brittany pumpkin carving evening, her apartment in Evanston. My mother mentioned it to me 2 days after the fact, assuming I had been invited and had chosen not to come. I had not been invited. I added it to the list. In December, there was a Christmas cookie exchange hosted by Brittany. My cousin Emma came. My cousin Priya flew in from Denver again, another plane ticket, another travel arrangement, and stayed at Brittany's apartment for a long weekend. My mother came. My Aunt Denise came. I found out from my mother when she mentioned, in our Sunday call, how nice it had been. I added it to the list. The list was now 14 items long, 14 separate instances, over 24 months, of family gatherings or activities that had been organized by Brittany or with her knowledge and participation, from which I had been specifically excluded. I want to pause here and tell you something important about the kind of person I am, because I think it matters for understanding why this took as long as it did. I am not a confrontational person. I don't mean this in the sense of being a pushover. I will advocate for myself and for things that matter to me. But I do not create conflict unnecessarily. I think carefully before I act. I prefer to understand something fully before I respond to it. This is, professionally, an asset. It makes me a precise designer and a careful thinker. Personally, in situations like this one, it meant that I extended grace long past the point where grace was warranted. I kept the list because I needed to be certain. I needed to be able to look at the evidence and know, without any remaining doubt, that what I was seeing was real. By the 3rd June, I had no remaining doubt. The third party was the most elaborate one yet. Brittany had found a venue with a rooftop terrace. She hired a photographer. She arranged a dinner for 22 people. which, as I later counted from the photos, represented every member of our family who lived within a 2-hour drive of Chicago. Except I was not in any of the 22 dinner seats. I found out from the photographer's Instagram, where she had tagged the venue and used the event as a portfolio piece. I found out 3 days after it happened, on a Tuesday evening, sitting at my desk in my apartment in Lincoln Park, looking at professional photographs of my family at a celebration that had taken place without me. There was a photograph of my mother at the table. She had her arm around my cousin Emma. She was laughing. She looked beautiful. She looked like herself. I looked at that photograph for a long time. I turned 29 in June. My mother took me to my favorite restaurant in the city, a small Italian place in Wicker Park called Osteria Lang that we had been going to for special occasions since I was in college. And we shared a bottle of wine and a pasta I have dreamed about since. And she gave me a small painting she had found at a gallery in Oak Park that she knew I would love. And it was a genuinely lovely birthday. Brittany sent a text at 7 p.m. "Happy birthday, Ash. Hope you're doing something fun." That was the entirety of her acknowledgement of my 29th birthday. The 4th June birthday party happened on June 15th, the day after my birthday. I know this because my cousin Tyler posted about it on Instagram at the end of the evening with the caption, "Another amazing year. At Brittany Reed, you always do it right." The post went up at 11:20 p.m. while I was doing the dishes from the birthday dinner my mother had taken me to. I liked the post. I did this deliberately because I wanted the record, whatever internal record things like this create, to show that I had seen it, that I was pretending not to see it. I went to my notes app and I added it. Line 41. Then I scrolled back through the entire list from the beginning. All 41 items. 4 years of specific instances, parties, gatherings, activities, documented with dates and descriptions, and, where I had them, photo evidence. I read through the whole thing the way you read through a document you have been building for years and are finally ready to use. And when I finished reading it, I did something I had not done in 4 years of keeping this record. I sent it to myself as an email. I printed it from my home printer. I put it in a manila folder. Then I picked up my phone and I called my mother. 11:45 p.m. She answered on the second ring. I said, "I need to talk to you about something. Not tonight, I'm okay. Nothing is wrong right now. But I need to have a conversation with you and Dad's, with you, about something that has been happening for 4 years. Can we have dinner this week?" My mother, who had known me for 29 years and had a precise understanding of what my voice sounded like when it meant business, said, "Wednesday. I'll come to you." We met Wednesday evening at my apartment. I had made a dinner. Nothing elaborate, pasta and salad. The kind of dinner you make when you want the food to be good enough that nobody goes hungry, but you want the meal to be about the conversation, not the cooking. I had the folder on the kitchen counter. Music. Fully quiet now. Just the low note, steady and present. My mother sat at my kitchen table, and I sat from her and I said, "I need to show you something, and I need you to let me get through all of it before you respond. Can you do that?" She said. I opened the folder and I put the printed list on the TED. I said, "This is every family gathering, event, or activity in the last 4 years that I was not invited to. Events that Brittany organized or coordinated. Some of them are birthday parties, the June ones you know about. Some of them are other things. All of them are documented. I have dates, descriptions, and in some cases photos." My mother looked at the first page. Her face was still in the way a face is still when it is processing something faster than it is showing. "I'm not showing you this to make you take sides. I'm showing you this because I need you to understand what I've been experiencing. And I need you to understand that this is not a misunderstanding or a series of oversights. I have been systematically excluded from our family by my sister for 4 years, and I need that to stop. I want to tell you what was on the list, not all 41 items. I won't read you a 4-year inventory. But I want to give you enough that you understand the specific, granular nature of what I am describing, because I think the details matter. Patterns are made of details. Remove the details, and you are left with a general grievance that can be dismissed as oversensitivity. Keep the details, and you have something that cannot be argued with. The list included 4 June birthday parties, years 1 through 4, organized for Emma, Tyler, and Jordan, from which I was excluded each time. 2 were at venues. 1 was at Brittany's apartment. 1 was at our cousin Emma's house in Wilmette. All 4 were attended by the majority of our family. None of them included an invitation to me. The list included a kayaking trip in August, 2 years prior, a pumpkin carving evening in October, a Christmas cookie exchange in December, a Valentine's Day brunch, organized by Brittany for the women of the family, which included our mother, our 2 aunts, our female cousins, and 2 of our mother's closest friends. Not me. Found out about the Valentine's Day brunch from our Aunt Denise, who assumed I had plans and couldn't come. The list included a surprise party for our cousin Marcus's promotion at work, a birthday dinner for our Aunt Denise's 60th, a group trip to a corn maze in October with the cousins, the photos from which appeared on Tyler's Instagram, a New Year's Eve gathering at Brittany's apartment the previous December. My mother attended. My aunts attended. My cousin Emma flew in from wherever she was living that year. I found out from my mother's Instagram story at 11:50 p.m. on New Year's Eve, from my apartment alone. The list included 2 family dinners that were organized, ostensibly spinelessly, in the group family text chain, which I am in, but had a secondary planning and conversation happening in a separate thread that I was not part of. I know about the secondary thread because my cousin Marcus, who is not a person who easily keeps information to himself, mentioned it without thinking in a conversation about something unrelated. He caught himself immediately and looked uncomfortable. I told him it was fine. I added it to the list. The list also included, and this is the item I spent the most time looking at, a family gathering at my mother's house park on the date of what would have been my father's 57th birthday. My mother hosts this every year. She makes his favorite meal, and they look at photographs and they remember him. I had been to this gathering every year since he died. The year I turned 28, I did not receive a reminder about it. I had never needed a reminder before. It was always the same date, always the same house. But there had been some question about whether it would happen that year, because my mother had been dealing with a minor health issue, and then there had been discussion, briefly, about whether to postpone it. The health issue resolved. The gathering went ahead. The text went out to the family confirming it. The text did not go to me. I found out when I called my mother on the date of my father's birthday, and she answered, and I heard voices in the background and realized the gathering was happening. She was devastated that I wasn't there. She had assumed the text had reached me. She had not checked. But someone had sent that text. Someone had put together it was sent to. My name was not on it. Music, the low note. I sat with my mother at my kitchen table, and I watched her read through those 7 pages, and I watched her face move through the specific progression of a person who is being shown something true that they did not want to know. She was not disbelieving. She was not dismissive. She was, and this is the right word, grieving. Grieving the version of her family she had believed in. When she finished reading, she said, "I want to talk to Brittany." I said, "We should all talk together, not so that I can ambush her. I don't want that. I want to sit at a table with my mother and my sister and have an honest conversation. I want to look her in the eye and ask her why." My mother arranged the dinner for a Thursday evening 3 weeks later at the house on Scoville Avenue. She told Brittany it was a family dinner, that she wanted the three of them together, that there were some things she needed to talk about. She did not tell Brittany what the things were. I had asked her not to, not out of ambush strategy, but because I knew that if Brittany had advance warning of the full topic, she would arrive with prepared defenses, rather than actual answers, and I needed her actual answers. I arrived at 6:30. My mother had made pot roast, the same dish she made for every significant family meal, as if the familiar smell of it was a kind of steadying force, something to hold on to when a conversation got hard. The table was set for 3. The house was quiet in the way it is quiet when a person has spent the afternoon thinking about what is coming. Brittany arrived at 6:45. She came in through the back door the way we always did, the way we had done our whole lives, dropping her keys on the hook by the door and calling out, "It's me," into the house the way you do when a house knows your body language, and you know its rhythms. She was wearing a light jacket and carrying a bottle of wine. She looked, when she came through the kitchen and saw me at the table, like a person who had understood that the terrain had shifted. She said, "Oh, hey Ash." A beat. Then, Mom said, "Family dinner. I didn't know you were going to be here." My mother said, "Sweetheart." We ate first. My mother is a woman who believes that important conversations should happen at a table where people have been fed. And so, ate the pot roast and the bread, and we talked about ordinary things, Brittany's work, project at my agency, a repair my mother was having done to the back deck. And whole time the folder sat on the kitchen counter behind my mother, and I watched Brittany's eyes find it once, and then deliberately not find it again. When the plates were cleared and my mother had poured 3 cups of coffee and sat back down, she looked at Brittany and she said, "Your sister has something she needs to show you. I've already seen it. I want you to look at it and I want you to hear what Ashley has to say, and then we're going to talk about it. All 3 of us together as a family." Brittany looked at me. Her expression was composed, the expression of a person who has excellent control of their face. She said, "Okay." I put the folder on the table. I said, "This is a list of every family event in the last 4 years that I was not invited to. Events you organized or coordinated. I have dates, descriptions, and in some cases photos. I'd like you to read it." She picked it up. She read slowly. The kitchen was completely quiet except for the sound of my mother's clock on the wall, which has ticked in that kitchen for 20 years. Steady and unhurried, she read all 7 pages. When she put it down, she didn't look up immediately. She looked at the table. And then she looked at me. Music? Nothing. Pure silence under the narration. She said, "I know what this looks like." I said, "Tell me what it looks like," she said. "It looks like I was leaving you out on purpose." I said, "Was you?" The pause before she answered was the longest pause in the room since I put down the folder. My mother, across the table, had her hands around her coffee cup. She was very still. I wanted to give you the fullest account I can of what my sister said next, because it is the center of this story, the part that explains everything while also changing everything. She said, "Dad you were always the one he talked to and walked with, and I know that's not something you chose. I know that's not something you did. But after he died, everyone looked at you like you were the keeper of him, like you were the one who carried him, and nobody looked at me that way. Nobody ever asked how I was doing with it because everyone was so focused on you. She said, I know how that sounds. But when you are excluded from a grief, when the whole family grieves around you instead of with you, because they are too busy grieving to someone else, it does something to you. And I know I handled it wrong. I know what I did was wrong. But I think it felt like the only thing I could control. The only way to be the one who mattered. The kitchen was very quiet, my mother said. Just her name, with everything a name can hold, Brittany said. I'm sorry, Ashley. I'm so sorry. I convinced myself it wasn't that serious, that you wouldn't really notice. They had your own life and your own friends and you'd need the family stuff the way I did. But I know that's not why I did it. I did it because I was angry and I didn't know who to be angry at and you were there. I sat with that. And here is something I want to tell you about that moment, because I think it mattered. I was not triumphant. I had been carrying the weight of 4 years of this, and I had a folder full of evidence, and my sister just admitted it out loud at a kitchen table with our mother as a witness, and I did not feel triumph. I felt grief. A specific, quiet grief for my sister who had been sitting inside her father's death for 7 years and had never found a way to say it, had instead built something out of the silence that had hurt us both. I know you loved him. I know you missed him. I'm sorry I didn't know you needed. I'm sorry I didn't see that you were struggling too. She looked at me in a way I don't have words. Saying for someone to say that and had stopped believing anyone ever would. The dinner ended late. We talked for 2 more hours after the conversation, not processing the confrontation, but talking the way you talk when something has been cleared away and there is suddenly room for honesty. Brittany talked about her grief in a way I don't think she had talked about it with anyone, including Craig. My mother talked about the years after my father died and the things she had not noticed and the things she wished she had done differently. I talked about what it had felt like to be excluded from events that meant something to me. Not the parties themselves, but the gathered family, the sense of being part of something collective. Brittany organized the 5th June birthday party the following summer. She sent the invitation to everyone she always invited. She also sent to me. It was not a grand gesture. It was not accompanied by a ceremony. It was a simplex. Hey, June birthdays are happening again. Please come. And I texted back, I will be there. And I was. I sat at a table with my cousins Emma and Tyler and Jordan and my mother and my aunts and uncles, and I ate the food and I laughed that were funny and I had a genuinely good evening. Brittany and I are not. I want to be honest, we are not the close friends that some sisters are. That closeness may come with time, and I am open to it, and I believe she is too. What we are right now is 2 people who sat at a kitchen table with their mother and told the truth, and who are figuring out, slowly and carefully, what comes after truth. That is not nothing. In fact, I think it might be the only place a real relationship can start from. The truth about what happened, said out loud, with witnesses. My mother, for her part, has been what she has always been. Steady, present, quietly determined to hold her family together without pretending things are okay when they're not. She calls us both every Sunday. She makes pot roast for significant meals. She keeps the clock on the wall wound and ticking. I have spent a lot of time thinking about what this story is actually about. On the surface it is about parties, birthday invitations, a folder with 7 printed pages. And those things are real, and they matter. The specific, concrete experience of being deliberately excluded from your own family is a real harm, and I want to name it as that, without qualification. What Brittany did was wrong. Knowing why she did it does not make it not wrong. But underneath the parties and the invitations and the folder, this story is about grief. About what happens to grief when it doesn't have anywhere to go. My sister Lar father. She lost him. She watched the family grieve in a direction that felt like it excluded her, and instead of saying that out loud, to me, to our mother, to anyone, she built something in the silence. Something that hurt, over time, in both directions. I am 29 years old. I am a graphic designer in Chicago. I work with patterns every day. I build systems that create coherence out of individual elements. And the thing I have learned from this, the thing I keep coming back to, is that patterns in families are built the same way patterns in Dezilt. One element at a time, each addition small enough to seem insignificant, the full picture only visible when you stack far enough to see the whole thing at once. I stepped back, I saw the whole thing, and instead of destroying it, I brought it to a table. That is what I have. That is what I keep. Not the parties I missed, not the 4 years of documented exclusion, not the triumph of being right, because there is triumph in being right about this kind of thing. What I keep is the table, the kitchen on Scoville Avenue, my mother's hands over ours, the clock ticking, the truth, finally out loud. That's enough. If you're here until the end, thank you. This one is for everyone who has ever been the empty chair, the person whose name wasn't on the list, the one who found out from a Facebook post the morning after. If this story felt familiar, I want you to know what you experienced was real. Exclusion is not imaginary. Being systematically removed from the people you love is a genuine harm, even when it happens quietly, even when nobody raises their voice, even when the person doing it would never describe what they're doing as deliberate. Patterns are made of choices, and choices, even the quiet ones, have weight. But I also want you to know, because this story has as a real ending, and I don't want to pretend otherwise, that the truth, spoken at a table with the right people present, has a weight of its own, a different kind, the kind that creates space instead of closing it off. Drop your city in the comments. Tell me if you've been the empty chair. Tell me what happened when you finally named it. I read every single one. Hit the bell. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. There are more stories coming, and every one of them is about the thing that matters most. What we do when the people we love the most are the ones who leave us out. I'll see you next time.